Good evening, Virgo. Anna speaking. The moment you click this, something locked into place. Don't move, don't scroll. This conversation rewrites your trajectory, but only if you stay present for every word. Most messages you consume are forgettable. Entertainment, distraction, something to fill time between moments that actually matter. This isn't that. This is the actual moment that matters, disguised as just another reading, just another video, just another scroll past digital content you consume and forget within hours. But you felt something when you saw the title, didn't you? Something tightened in your chest. Something whispered, "Pay attention." Something in you recognized that the claim wasn't hyperbole, wasn't clickbait, wasn't exaggeration designed to capture attention. It was statement of fact. This conversation, this specific exchange between me and you right now, this determines whether you access the timeline you're meant for or whether you miss the window and spend years wondering what would have happened if you'd listened when listening mattered. Here's what you need to understand immediately. There are conversations that change nothing and conversations that change everything. Conversations where information transfers but nothing shifts versus conversations where single sentence, single realization, single moment of genuine hearing rewrites how you see yourself, how you see your situation, how you see what's possible for someone with your history, your limitations, your circumstances that you've been letting define what you can achieve is less than #0. 5# is greater than. This is the second kind. The kind you remember years later as before and after moment. Before you heard what I'm about to tell you, after you integrated it and everything changed, but only if you actually hear it. Only if you let it land. Only if you don't do what you usually do, which is consume the information, nod along, feel momentarily inspired, and then return to exact same patterns that have been keeping you stuck. Because patterns are comfortable even when they're destructive. Even when they're preventing you from accessing life you claim you want, but apparently don't want badly enough to actually change the behaviors that guarantee you never get it. I'm not here to be gentle, not here to soothe you, not here to tell you what you want to hear. I'm here to tell you what you need to hear. And what you need to hear is harsh, is confronting, is going to make you uncomfortable, because comfort is your prison. Is the thing keeping you small? Is the reason you're still in the same position you were in last year, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, despite all the consuming of content, all the learning, all the knowing better that somehow never translates into doing better? Let me show you what this conversation is actually about and why missing it costs you everything. You've been waiting for right time, waiting for more resources, waiting for more confidence, waiting for circumstances to align, waiting for permission from someone, from universe, from yourself to actually pursue the thing you're supposed to be pursuing but have been avoiding through convincing yourself that waiting is wisdom, when actually waiting is fear wearing disguise that lets you feel reasonable about your paralysis is less than #0. 5# is greater than. And the waiting has cost you years, opportunities, relationships with people who would have been part of your journey if you'd started when starting was possible, who've since moved on because they couldn't wait indefinitely for you to be ready. When ready is state, you keep pushing further into future versions of yourself you could have become if you'd been willing to be uncomfortable, to be bad at something before becoming good at it, to risk failure instead of guaranteeing stagnation through never trying. The waiting ends now, not when you feel ready, not when conditions are perfect, now, today, this moment, because the window you've been waiting for, the opportunity you've been claiming you'll seize when timing is right, it's open right now and it's closing faster than you realize. And if you don't move, if you don't act, if you don't translate this conversation into immediate behavioral change instead of just another piece of inspiration you consumed and forgot, the window closes and doesn't reopen. Not in this form, not with these specific conditions that make success actually achievable if you move now. Here's what I see when I look at your energy, at your situation, at the fork in the road you're standing at right now. Left path is continuation, same patterns, same results, same story you've been living where you're always almost ready, always almost there, always on verge of breakthrough that never quite breaks through because you stop pushing right before the wall would have crumbled. This path is familiar, safe, predictable. It's also the path to regret, to looking back at your life in 10 years and seeing decade of potential wasted, decade of same cycles repeated, decade where nothing fundamentally changed because you chose comfort over growth. Every single time choice presented itself. Right path is unknown, scary, uncomfortable. It requires you to do things you've never done, to become someone you've never been, to bet on yourself in ways you've been unwilling to bet because betting means risking being wrong, being exposed, being humiliated if you fail publicly after finally trying instead of maintaining the dignity of never having tried. So failure is hypothetical rather than actual. But this path, this uncomfortable, unknown path, this is where the life you actually want lives, where the version of you that you respect lives, where achievement and fulfillment and genuine pride in who you've become and what you've built lives. You're choosing right now. Not consciously, maybe, not explicitly, but how you respond to this conversation determines which path you take. If you listen and then do nothing, if you let this be just another moment of inspiration that fades without translating into action, you've chosen left path. You've chosen continuation, stagnation, slow death of potential through refusing to actualize it. If you listen and then move, if you let this be catalyst that finally breaks your paralysis, if you do one thing today that's different from what you did yesterday, one thing that signals commitment to different path rather than just thinking about different path while walking same path you've always walked. You've chosen right path is less than #0. 5# is greater than. You've chosen growth. You've chosen becoming. You've chosen the discomfort that precedes every transformation worth having. This reflection invites you to consider which path are you actually on based on your behavior, not your intentions, and does that path lead where you claim you want to go? Let me tell you what you're capable of that you're not accessing. You're capable of discipline you're not exercising. Capable of focus, you're not applying. Capable of sustained effort. You're not investing because sustained effort is hard, is boring, is unglamorous work that doesn't provide immediate gratification that our dopamine addicted brains crave. You know what you should be doing. You know the actions that would move you toward your goals. You know what successful people in your field do differently than you're doing. You have the information. You have the knowledge. What you lack isn't information. What you lack is execution. What you lack is willingness to do boring, necessary work every single day, regardless of how you feel, regardless of whether it's exciting, regardless of whether you see immediate results that validate the effort. And you've been lying to yourself about why you're not executing. Telling yourself it's because you don't have time, when actually you have same 24 hours as everyone else and successful people in your field. Make time by eliminating the time-wasting activities you're still indulging in. Telling yourself it's because you don't have resources. When people with fewer resources have achieved what you're saying is impossible without resources you don't have is less than has-hone. Zero hash is greater than. Telling yourself it's because you're not ready when ready is myth, is excuse, is thing you'll never feel if you're waiting to feel it before acting, because feeling ready comes from acting, from building evidence through doing, that you're capable, not from thinking about being capable until confidence magically appears. Stop lying. Stop the excuses. Stop the elaborate justifications for why you're special case, where normal rules don't apply, where you need different conditions than others needed, where you deserve to wait until perfect alignment that's never coming. You're not special case. You're normal person who's been choosing comfort over growth and then wondering why growth isn't happening. You're normal person who's been consuming inspiration instead of taking action and then confused why inspiration doesn't translate into results. You're normal person who wants the outcomes successful people get without being willing to do what successful people do to get those outcomes. And that ends today, right now, this moment. Because continuing to lie to yourself about why you're stuck, continuing to blame circumstances instead of choices, continuing to wait for conditions that don't need to be perfect for you to start, that costs you the one life you have, the one chance you get to see what you're actually capable of if you'd stop performing limitation and start challenging it. This reflection invites you to consider, what's the one excuse you keep using, and what would happen if you admitted its excuse rather than legitimate obstacle is less than #0. 5 hashes greater than? Here's what most important conversation of your life requires from you. First, radical honesty. Stop performing. Stop pretending. Stop maintaining image of yourself as a person who's trying when actually you're dabbling, you're playing at commitment while reserving right to quit when it gets hard, reserving right to pull back when discomfort exceeds your tolerance. Admit where you're actually at. Admit what you're actually doing versus what you tell yourself and others you're doing. Admit that gap between your stated priorities and your actual behavior reveals that your stated priorities aren't actually your priorities. They're just things you wish were your priorities, while your actual priorities are comfort, safety, avoiding discomfort even when discomfort is required for growth you claim you want. This Honesty hurts. It's supposed to hurt. Hurt is the feeling of illusions dying, of lies you've been telling yourself getting exposed, of gap between who you pretend to be and who you actually are becoming undeniable. But hurt is also beginning of change, because you can't change what you won't acknowledge, can't fix problems you won't admit you have, can't grow past limitations you insist don't exist or aren't your responsibility. Second requirement, immediate action. Not tomorrow, not Monday, not when you finish this current project or get through this busy season or feel more prepared. Today, right now. Before this conversation ends, before you move on to next distraction, before momentum dissipates and you return to comfortable patterns that feel safe because they're familiar, even though they're slowly killing your potential, is less than #0. 5 is greater than. One action, one concrete step, one thing you do differently today than you did yesterday that signals commitment to different path. Doesn't have to be huge, doesn't have to solve everything, just has to be real, has to be actual behavioral change rather than just mental shift that makes you feel different without actually being different. You know what the action is. You've known for months, maybe years. It's the thing you keep putting off. The conversation you need to have, the application you need to submit, the project you need to start, the habit you need to begin, the relationship you need to end, the boundary you need to set. Whatever it is, you know what it is, and you do it today, or you prove that this conversation, despite being titled Most Important Conversation of Your Life, is actually just another piece of content you consumed without being changed by. Third requirement, sustained commitment past the point where you usually quit. This is where most people fail. They start well, they have moment of inspiration, of determination, of genuine intention to change. They act on it for a day, for a week, maybe even for a month. Then discomfort accumulates. Results don't come as quickly as hoped. Motivation fades, and they quit, usually right before the breakthrough, usually right before sustained effort would have started generating visible results that make continuing easier. You will want to quit. Plan for it. Expect it. Don't be surprised when the voice in your head says, this isn't working, this is too hard, this was stupid idea, you should go back to what you were doing before is less than #0. 5 is greater than. That voice is your comfort-seeking mechanism doing its job, which is keeping you safe, keeping you in known territory, protecting you from risk of trying and failing by convincing you to stop trying before failure becomes possible. Ignore the voice, not because it's wrong about discomfort, it's right. This is hard, this is uncomfortable, this is requiring more of you than what you were doing before. But discomfort is price of admission. Discomfort is how you know you're growing. Discomfort is temporary sensation that yields to competence, to confidence, to capability that comes from pushing through resistance until resistance lessens because you've become strong enough that what was hard becomes manageable. This reflection invites you to consider when you've quit things in the past, what was the pattern, and how will you interrupt that pattern this time? let me speak to why this specific conversation, this specific moment matters more than others. Timing. You're at inflection point where small changes compound into massive results because you're positioned correctly, because groundwork has been laid even if you haven't recognized it, because one more push, one more commitment, one more month of sustained effort tips you over threshold into momentum, into visibility, into results that make continuation self-reinforcing instead of requiring constant willpower to override desire to quit. But inflection points have windows, have expiration dates, have moments when conditions are right and moments when conditions shift and opportunity that was there isn't there anymore, isn't accessible anymore, requires starting over from different position with different resources at different time is less than #0. 5 is greater than. You're in the window now. The window where acting has disproportionate returns, where effort invested generates multiplied results because timing amplifies impact. Miss this window and you don't get the same window back. You get different window with different conditions requiring different approach. Maybe that window is better, maybe it's worse, maybe it never comes. Point is, this window, this opportunity, this moment where everything aligns to make success achievable through sustained effort, this is here now and it's time sensitive. And treating it like it's not, treating it like you can come back to this later when you feel like it, when you're ready, when conditions are even more perfect. That's how you miss opportunities that would have changed your life if you'd seized them when seizing was possible. And here's the brutal truth. Some people will hear this and act. Some people will let this be the catalyst, will let this be the conversation that finally breaks their paralysis, finally converts knowing into doing, finally bridges gap between who they are and who they're capable of becoming. These people will look back in 5 years, and see this as turning point, as a moment when everything shifted because they shifted, because they chose differently, because they let discomfort of growth matter more than comfort of stagnation. But most people won't. Most people will listen, will nod, will feel inspired, will think, yes, this is what I needed to hear. And then they'll do nothing. They'll return to patterns. They'll waste the window. They'll be back in same position next year wondering why nothing changes while refusing to acknowledge that nothing changes because they don't change, because they keep choosing same actions while expecting different results. Which one are you? Which one are you going to be? Not which one you want to be. Which one you're actually going to be based on what you do in next 24 hours, based on whether you take immediate action or whether you let this fade into just another moment of inspiration that didn't translate into transformation, because inspiration without action is just entertainment. This is the most important conversation you'll ever have. Not because I'm special, because you're at the moment where hearing truth and acting on it rewrites your trajectory. Or hearing truth and ignoring it confirms your trajectory stays exactly where it is. Choose wisely. Choose today. Choose action over intention. Your life is waiting. The version of you that you respect is waiting. The outcomes you want are waiting. But they're not waiting indefinitely. The window closes. The opportunity expires. The time is now or the time is never. What are you going to do about it?